Alrighty, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, we're going to read verse 1 through 17. Verse 1 through 17. We're going to, just like we kind of did this morning, we're going to backtrack again, and we're going to get our footing, and then we're going to push forward a little bit, Lord willing, and we'll continue in doing so as we have some people that have been out, some people have heard certain things, some people haven't. So we want to make sure that everybody specifically gets what they need, and repetition is quite key in this, but not just repetition for repetition's sake. So we'll start here. 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is not good for a man to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence. Does anybody remember what that word due benevolence means? That's definitely a factor of it. Okay, we'll get back there. All right. And likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. And likewise the husband hath not power over his own body, but the wife. It's interesting that the Hebrew parallelism here is really simple, and then small parts are left out of the next structure, and then major parts are left out of the next structure. It's all on purpose. It's really incredible. Verse 5, defraud ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. But I speak this by permission. Again, that word permission we're going to go over, and it's not what it's commonly thought today. It's often used as evidence of the error of the Scripture, and not of commandment. For I would that all men were even as I myself, but every man hath his proper gift of God, one after this manner, another after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. What do we think the word burn means? In what context? Say again? Oh, no, it's not. That's the normal thinking. It's not. No. Let's do this. But if they cannot contain, okay, meaning I'm getting way ahead of myself, but this is so fun to read this. But if they cannot maintain themselves, it is better to marry than to be full of lust their whole life. Okay, it's not talking about if they cannot let them marry, all of that. No, I've heard that too. But this is the opposite of contain. If they can't contain, then if someone is not going to marry, but then they cannot contain themselves, but they're at the same time going to remain non-married, that's going to cause some serious problems in their life. Right? So that's what it's talking about there. And unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband. But, and if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. But to the rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother hath... There's so much going on there, I'm going to have to press on. What he's saying here in a nutshell, to give an overview, is this is God's design. But if that design is violated, okay, now that you're there, this is God's design. Okay, now if you find yourself in this position past that, okay, now this is God's design for your situation. For instance, it's not God's design for a man and a woman to have premarital sex, right? But there's a reason why I can sit down with a new 14-year-old father and tell him God's design for his life moving forward. You see what I mean? That's for that to happen. It's not God's design. But God also when man violates that design, he just doesn't leave them to themselves and to no hope whatsoever. It's just destroyed. It's now that you're in this position, this is God's design for moving forward. Now, keep this in mind because it's going to make a lot of sense when I get into it. Does the Bible say, do the scriptures say God's design for a 14-year-old new father? No, right? If you want to chapter and verse things and think that way, that no, there's not. But there is. Because we know the nature of our God. See, this is what Paul is saying here when he says, I speak this by permission. It's not he's given permission in that way. It's that idea of joint-mindedness. He's intimately knowing God's design. And so because he's knowing that, he's knowing specific situations. So the Lord hasn't commanded this, so to speak, but I am knowing this is God's design for this situation. Don't we do that all the time? Right? So it's nothing new. But anyway, we'll get into that then. That's an incredible part here. Again, verse 11, but if she depart, let her remain unmarried. So don't depart, but if you do, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband. And let not the husband put away his wife. But what if she gets married again? Okay, then stop right there. This is God's design for your life now moving forward. Do you see what I mean? It's not that if you violate the design of God and you get a divorce, let's say, now there's a whole lot in this. So let me be pointed so as not to mislead in certain thoughts. Let's say, let's leave that alone for now because there's a bigger picture that needs to be explained with that. Let me move on and I'll get my brain back. Okay. So it's not God's design for the married people to divorce. But if they do divorce, here's the design, right? And if that design's broken, then here's the design now. So let not the wife depart from her husband. But if she depart, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. And then saying the same thing to him without even saying it. So it's not just one way to the woman, it's the other way to the man too. But to the rest speak I, not the Lord. So here he goes back to that joint-mindedness, his knowledging upon God's design, his experiential knowledge of this. If any brother hath a wife that believe not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. And the woman which hath an husband that believeth not, and if she be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. When people get married, is it normal that the husband and the wife both get saved at the same time? Not really. I mean, it happens, but it's not really the normal. Now, they even may come together all at once, but it's not that their brains both clicked at the same time and wanted to get saved and put their faith and trust in Christ. Well, one of them did it. And then it's through the conversation, it's through the manner, it's through the nature of that new believer that they bring their spouse along with them. And so, verse 14, for the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife. It doesn't mean that if the wife gets saved, then the husband's saved too. No, he is sanctified in that manner in the sense that witness that is constantly with him. And the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Elsewhere your children unclean, but now they are holy. Again, it's that effect, that God designed effect that the believer has by causing firmness to Christ to the other unbelievers in the family. So it's not the Calvinistic doctrine that if you're saved, or there's many, I guess not every situation, not everyone believes that, but there's this idea that if I get saved, if God chose me, then he chose my lineage or something like that. No, that's not how that works. Verse 15, but if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace or to completeness. Not tonight, but we're going to go over that word bondage. It's not talking about marriage being a bondage, okay? For what knowest thou, O wife? See, and then here's the ground or reason of what he said. For what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shalt save thy husband? Or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou shalt save thy wife? But as God hath distributed to every man, as the Lord hath called every man, so let him walk, and so ordain I in all churches. So that's how they were to interact with their unbelieving family members. So let's go back to verse 1 here, just for the sake of those who weren't here. He writes, "Now concerning things whereof ye wrote unto me," clearly there are some very strong believers in the assembly at Corinth that stayed around and that were desiring. They didn't go and split off, and I'm not saying you should always do this, but this is the situation here. They didn't split off and go start something else. They truly loved the people there, and they were desiring them to come back alongside truth and establish themselves. They had written Paul pertaining to all of these issues. And so this is one issue where now Paul is saying, just in the manner that you wrote me, now I'm going to touch on that. He states, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Now, we went until last week about a lot of the modern translations not translating touch accurately. They literally translated a derived concept, which isn't a surprise, but it's incredibly damaging. They change it to either not to marry or not to have sexual relations with. Both of those have effects by viewing it that way. A lot of erroneous thinkings, there's a lot of damage done. And even if there's no damage done, it doesn't matter. We need to know what God wrote, not what man thinks about what God wrote. We need to know precisely what he said. Every time that word touch is used in the text, it is literally the concept of one thing coming into contact with another. For instance, when you touch fire to sticks, it's kind of used in that way too, or to touch a human being, or to touch something. It's literally that concept of something coming into contact with another thing. So the whole sexual relations and not marry, see, all those are derived thought processes. There is they can hate me all they want. There is also a perversion in the mind of man behind that translational change. You go from not touch, and then his mind goes to that. Now, in a manner, I can see how that occurs, but there's always there seems to be a perversion there. So we looked at that. It's literally not to touch. Verse 2, nevertheless, to avoid fornication, or literally because fornication exists. And that word fornication there is the same word porneia. What is porneia? Like we've said before, porneia is any violation of the man-woman relationship. Any violation whatsoever. It's not, see, how many believers think, well, I haven't cheated on my wife or my husband, so I haven't committed fornication. Because you don't want to be labeled as that, because that's bad. So as long as I don't physically do it, but yet they may have a relationship with a woman at work or a man at work. That's like a best friend situation, that they communicate with that individual in a way, in a closeness and an intimacy that they don't with their husband or their wife. That's porneia. Having any sort of in any way that is a breach of that man-woman relationship. Emotions, feelings, physical touch, thoughts, all of it, the all-inclusive of it. Anything outside of that. Any of giving that to another. Or really, as well as any of that not given to that other. See, it goes far beyond what we have limited this down to. And clearly, in Corinth, there's, again, which is not surprising when you have the little leaven of pride and arrogance leavening the whole lump. You have all of corruption. And when you have a modern Christianity that has, just in general, that has controlled the meaning of the scripture in people's minds. So I say it this way, we live in a modern dark age. Everybody reads it, but everybody has their own concepts of what it means. The lexicons give derived terminologies. The commentaries don't even recognize how God gave it. They give their own ideas about it. And then man is left just like the Jews and the Pharisees and rabbis. They go and read what the rabbis wrote about the scripture, and that's what they believe instead of the scripture. Or that's what they decide how they're going to believe it. You see, But that word porneia of fornication encompasses all of that, because the realm of your mind belongs to the other. All of it. All of it. So because porneia exists, because this exists, so why is a man not to touch a woman? Is it just a man not to touch a woman? Now, if you realize when we're reading down there, it's the man, the woman, the man. And it goes in different orders, but it's the man and the woman, and it goes back and forth, right? So in the instances where it's specifically just talking about the man or the woman, and there doesn't seem to be a converse, there's a converse. So it's not simply that a man is not to touch a woman, it's that a woman is not to touch a man. Okay, so both are there. This is not a one-sided text. This is literally in depth God's design for the man-woman relationship. So why is a man not to touch a woman? Because this is not the way porneia comes in. This is a way. So porneia, yes. Go ahead.
So when it's talking about touch a woman, I'm guessing it's sexual orientation of touching a woman instead of just, or it's like period, you can't touch a woman.
Period. That's what it's stating. Yeah. So what it's showing here is that.
What about like the mother? I mean, that would be okay, right?
Of course, yeah.
So I'm asking this too. So
sure.
Say if you were dating someone, you couldn't like hold hands
correct.
or anything.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
What occurs in the mind because of that?
Right here, because fornication exists.
Correct.
We are perverted.
Mm-hmm. We're naturally. So God has so sex itself is not perverse. It's perfect. It's a beautiful thing. It's something that a man and a woman, or a woman and a man, enjoy with each other in the design of God. But everything outside of that is perverse. And because of all the perversion and the perversion of man's mind normally prevailing, we view sex as something bad. But it's not. How could God design something that's bad? Can't. It's perfect. Only man can corrupt it, sure. Yes, exactly. So wouldn't it be better for children, and I don't mean the way the world teaches them, good grief, but wouldn't it be better for children, not children, you say teenagers or young adults as they're learning and growing, to actually know God's design about something before it occurs, instead of not knowing? If they're not knowing accurately, if they're not being taught accurately, don't you think someone's going to teach them? Someone's going to teach them, right? Oh, there's a reason why Archie.
Yeah. It's, they don't teach.
Yeah, right. No, part of it is limiting the teachers and influences that your children have.
And then you're sending them to someone that
correct.
You don't know.
Oh, you already know. You just don't know to what extent, right?
Yeah.
So you can just assume correctly that it's error.
Yeah, it's always.
Yes. So, but yes, sex itself is nothing perverse and gross. It's only something that man perverts. So when it's saying it's not good, it is not God's design. See, we think, oh, it's not good. See, it's permissible, but it's not a good idea. So in certain instances, it's permissible. I'm not saying if someone's drowning, you don't touch them, you don't help them, right? That's not the context. But because all these porneic influences exist, because the design of God is so corrupted by human beings, it's that the touching, it's wrapping up this relationship with the man and his woman and the woman and her man. It's wrapping this up. Do not touch here, but let every man be having and every woman be having. See, it's almost directional in a way. So it's limiting, it's setting the bounds of this relationship. Does that make sense? So that's what it's doing. That's what it's doing. But good question. Mm-hmm. Now, I touched on it last week, but there's a really incredible piece in here the Lord put in here. As if it's all not. But I'm looking at this little piece right now, so I'm enjoying looking at it and saying it's awesome. But it's not taking away from the whole, okay? It's literally the verbs, and everything is giving all of this from the position of the man as the head. Remember, without taking away the modern concept of authority and how violation is often intertwined in that, as far as the man being the head, the leader, all that. But as the man is the head, it's literally written from the direction of the man as having his own woman, as he owns her. Again, not with the modern erroneous perspective of that, but that perfect relationship we've been talking about in Genesis that God designed. And when it talks about the woman having her own husband, it's literally from the perspective of God's design of the woman having the man that she belongs to. It's really incredible. It's written very, very in depth. Okay, so because porneia exists, nevertheless, that's why the words to avoid are italicized, or should be. Fornication. And then you have this perfect parallelism. Let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. So, we live in a violational world that is constantly seeking to corrupt God's design of sex. Our flesh naturally wants to corrupt God's design there. God's design must be interacted with according to his design. That's what I was saying earlier. The touching is not the only way that porneic influences happen. Can you have in your mind a porneic influence without touching somebody? Yes, you can. See, what it's not saying that this is, if you don't do this, don't touch women ever, and no matter what, if it's your mother or whatever the situation is, because then that'll happen. No, Paul is narrowing down one specific issue among all of them. You see, he's going point by point. So this is a very specific manner. God, the Creator, perfectly designed every aspect of the relationship between the man and his individual woman. The man and woman must interact with each other in the perfect design of marriage. How often, mankind really has the ability to act one way. Both sides has the ability to act one way before marriage and then another after, don't we? There's a lot of issues. But this is a must. This is a command. Mankind must interact in God's perfect design of marriage. How often is the marriage relationship used for selfishness? As we go through this, it's going to tear apart all of man's perspectives of selfishness. Now, we've already talked about what love is. Love is desiring God's will in the life of another person. You could say it is desiring God's best, what God has for that person. It's not selfish whatsoever. If you listen to people, and I know you do, but if you listen to people explain why they married somebody, you'll hear, or why they like somebody, they're pleasing to my eyes. In some manner, they're pleasing to the eyes, and they do something to better the life of the person that's claiming to love them. So in some way, let's just take it from the man perspective as a male. In some way, that woman, not that one, just a different one, not a different one, but I'm getting myself in a hole here. No. But in some way, she makes me feel better. She benefits me. But then, or vice versa again. But all of a sudden, what happens in life when that goes away? They're no longer pleasing to the eyes. Well, that's a choice. So you got a bigger problem there. No longer pleasing to the eyes, no longer seeming to benefit me. And all of a sudden, my affection for her changes. Her value in my eyes has changed to something that's not desirable. And the next thing that comes out of my mouth is something to the effect of, well, I guess I just fell out of love with her. Correct? So what do? Well, I justify. No, there's other areas that we'll need to get into for specifics in other situations, but I'm being very general right now. Um, I recognize that there is incredible physical abuse in certain situations, and those need to be dealt with individually as the situation is. So I'm not. That's kind of the area I'm not wanting to bring into this at the moment because that needs some more clarification. But all of a sudden, they're no longer pleasing to me, and so I separate from them, and I self-justify on why it's God's will for me to do that. And then what do? I restart the process all over again. I look for somebody that's appealing to the eyes, that makes me feel good in a certain way, that seems to benefit me. And then we're married 2, 3, 4 times, and at some point we just give up. We either give up and just stay stuck with that person in our mind, or we give up and say we're done. But the problem's never solved because we have one word definition that's wrong. All of that from one word. Now there's a whole lot more going on there. But if that one word of love was understood when we say, I love that person, wouldn't that kind of change everything there? Everything. You know, it'd kind of be important for children before they're married to, it is not back here, I'm sorry. It'd kind of be important, it sounds like. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we knew what God's design was, if the ladies knew what God's design was for a man and how he's to interact in marriage so that she would know what to look for in a husband and then choose from that pool, so to speak? And wouldn't it be incredible if she already knew God's design for the woman and how she was to be a wife long before she ever stepped into marriage? Do you think they would, and if they're both doing that, wouldn't they choose very differently than they normally choose? It sounds like it'd be a very strong relationship right out the bat. A lot of marriages would be changed like that. The divorce rate would be changed that quickly. All because marriage itself has been, the parameters of marriage have been redefined by mankind. And there's a myriad of issues there, but that's a huge chunk of it. The man and woman must interact with each other in the perfect design of marriage, so that each one is receiving strength from the other as perfectly designed. The word must have, again, is an imperative, meaning a command, and it's in the present. So must be having, it's a continuous action, indicating that continuous direction of a relationship, like I was saying. Verse 3, let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence. That word due benevolence there in the Greek is literally, let me read it before I go off my mind. Good-mindedness. It's good-mindedness. Now, do you see where benevolence, our English definition today of benevolence comes from? Right? That kindness, that taking care of in a manner, a very benevolent person. Well, it's because there's a thought process behind it. There's a good thought process behind it, right? But does it just simply mean be kind? No. Does it mean just be nice? No. Does it mean to correct one another in the proper way? Yes. See, what is good-minded? I'll phrase it this way. Could good-mindedness be anything but the definition of love? You see, it's looking at the same thing from another angle. Everything that I just spoke of what love is, I owe that good-mindedness, that good thinking toward my woman. I owe her to be in constant work and labor to know what she's going to need next to strengthen her relationship and her God, and to give her all that God has designed me to give her, to steward that relationship. It's that forward thinking that has to be there, which, I owe that to her. And she owes that to me. You see, getting along is not the point of marriage. We find somebody that we click with, that we get along with, and because we get along, oh, well, this marriage will be easy. Well, guess what? Until you no longer get along. Why is there such a hump at 7 to 10 years? Why is there such a rise in divorce right about that time? There's right about that. There's like the 2 to 3 year mark, and then there's that one. Well, because they're finally getting sick and tired of each other. Why? Because there's enough life we're already not prepared for, because we weren't prepared for marriage, right? And then all of this builds up, and it's all messed up, and it all tends to unravel at some point. You see, so the point is not to get along. Getting along is a byproduct, or an accurate getting along is an accurate byproduct of each, the husband or the man and his woman both, giving each other good-mindedness, strengthening each other in the design of God, helping each other be all that God has designed them to be. Is that rare? No, forget the world. Is that rare? If I'm not careful, that can make me really angry. It's all right here. It's pretty simple. Why it took me so long to see it? Because it's my fault. But there's no excuses. This has been being preached and taught for how long now? How long? See, this is why general truth is not helpful. General truth is not worth much, if anything. Generally try to get along. Generally try to do good. You see, it's how do you apply it though? How do you live it? You've got to get away from the generalities, and you've got to get into the specifics, to the analytical specifics. But we still have an incredible amount of families not doing what I'm saying here in the positive way and doing what I'm talking about in the negative way. And they've been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. The children are coming up behind them doing the same thing. It's still going on all over the place. And the goal is still just to get along. Ooh, watch the children in a home where the goal is to get along. See how long those children actually seek after God when they get out of the house. So, there's zero selfishness in God's design of marriage. Nothing. Okay, general knowledge. You know, we hear that, for an example here, we hear the concept of, well, we know marriage is not 50-50 because that's what the world says. Marriage is 100 and 100. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means you try real hard. You don't care about you. You just care about them. How? See, we can say these things, but they're not lived that way. But how? In what areas? What manner? And so that's what's getting into here. Okay, yeah, we'll move on here. So there's nothing selfish about God's design of marriage. If I owe my woman good-mindedness and I don't give it to her, I'm harming her and I'm harming me, but I'm not violating her design of marriage. I'm violating God's design of marriage. See, when we get away from the fact of how we normally lived, in the sense of I'm going to treat her based on how she treats me, the tit for tat mentality. See, when we do that, we don't mind doing something against the other person because they harmed us too, and that justifies it. But when we actually see clearly that it doesn't matter how they act, I owe them good-mindedness because this is the stewardship that my God gave me. And so I'm not sinning against my partner, my wife, my woman, or your man. You're not. You're violating the very design of your Creator that you claim to love and serve. See, we've got to see these things clearly. So, chapter 7, verse 4. Again, this goes far beyond getting along. By the way, the whole getting along thing is why forget the world's counseling, is why most Christian counseling doesn't work. Because you've got the problem. Let's say the man cheats on his wife, okay? Well, now we just get them to get along. We don't really fix the problems. Just stop doing that, get along, and then go back to how things were. Just go back to life. See, the problem's never solved, but at least now we're getting along. You know why that's so? It seems to be. You know why that's so important to us? Because we care a lot about image and whatever other people think. That's a huge factor. Verse 4, the wife hath not power of her own body. See, now we get into verse 4. Now there's a piece missing. But the husband, understood, has power over her own body. And likewise, the husband hath not power over his own body, but the wife, understood, has the power over his own body. So that idea of power there is it's causative. We'll just leave it to that. So the wife is owning the body of her husband, and the husband is owning the body of his wife. Now, so the woman, she is not causing authority over her own body and does not possess the authority over her own body. And we'll just stop right there. That sounds great, doesn't it? Normally we kind of stop there, don't we? Oh, there's more. Okay. So the man, he is not causing authority of his own body, does not possess the authority of his own body. And of course, again, this goes both ways. So when this text, once again, don't care, I'm getting sick of it. When you hear somebody teach this for an excuse of why a man should always get what he wants, they're destroying people. And they're very wicked. And when we hit on this, we might just get this far this evening too. But if a man is so selfish that he wants to get his physical needs met, and he doesn't care what mental harm he's doing to his wife, that man is a very perverse man. Period. Been there, done that, won't do it anymore. He's a perverse man. I don't care what title he has. I don't care what authority he thinks he has. He has no authority outside of God's design of his authority. Because guess what? The woman also owns his body. So guess what? He can't touch her unless she says, I want that body to touch me. Because it goes both ways. It's both ways. But see, it was never meant to be used as a weapon. But that's how it's used. It was from that perspective, what we just covered, of good-mindedness. So we just left the good-mindedness and we're back to the selfishness. Fulfill my perverted lust, or I don't care about you. So he owns her body to do her good. She owns his body to do him good. That's the design. That's the opposite of everything I've ever heard. But it's right there. Again, just to clarify, if this is used that the man can do whatever he wants, she owns his body so she can say, no, I don't want it touching me. And if the man has an issue with that, then he doesn't actually believe what God said. I wonder if we have more problems than we think. This is a major factor of a destroying of the man-woman relationship. A major, 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 major factor. Trust is lost. Care for the other person is lost. That phileo, that affectioning one another is just lost. It's beaten out of them. It's that mental abuse of just beating it out of them. And it does horrendous things. We went into it last week, so I won't do too much of it today. But it was never to be weaponized. This was to bring comfort to the man and to the woman. When you get married, you really like the idea of trusting that person, right? You really like the idea of, I belong to him and he belongs to me. We love that concept. Why? Because at least initially, for the most part, there's that trust and that reliance on one another. Why? Because I'll say it in this way. Because there's almost an understanding, without really phrasing it this way, that he owes me good-mindedness and she owes me good-mindedness. And I can trust her. And I can trust him because we're one together. But when we act out our life contrary to that, that gets destroyed and demolished. But this is designed to... How many times have you read this? If you're a lady, how many times have you read this and you've just cringed or you've stiffened up like, okay, I'll try to figure this out. This doesn't make sense. This is really, really difficult. This is to bring comfort. The man holds authority over the body of his woman. And again, this is not just for physical gratification, and is commanded by God to interact with that which he owns in accord with his perfect design. The woman holds authority over the body of her man and is commanded by God to steward all that the Creator has put under her authority in perfect accord with who he is. And then verse 5. Defraud ye not one the other. Defraud ye not. Defraud. Let's pause for a minute. Defraud. It's literally where we get our word. The root of it is literally where we get our word stereo from. Remember when it's probably a very dangerous question to ask, but do you remember when the stereos came out? Right? Where did the word stereo come from? Well, it came from the Greek word stereo. It means to strengthen. Well, what did the stereo do? It turned up the noise, right? It made it loud. And so it's that concept of strengthening. Well, this has a negation at the front of that word, and it literally means to remove strength from. So this isn't talking about, again, this is not simply talking about you can't defraud me, that physical contact, because I own your body and I can do what I want with it. You see, we're not even reading anything like that, but that's what the mind of man puts on it. It's remove strength from, literally, and this is a command, stop removing strength from one another. The strength of what? Of that good-mindedness, okay? Of that interaction with each other in that way. Now, this specifically is in this sense. Now, there's a broader picture to it, but in this sense, he has it narrowed down to that physical contact of relationship with one another. Okay, but that's what he's narrowed it down to, but it has that whole picture behind it. All right, so defraud ye not. Stop removing strength from one another, except it be with consent for a time. So you are not to do this unless both are agreed, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. Now, this is the way this is worded is in ending the list here of verses 1 through 5. The content and all that, we didn't go into it, and Lord willing, we will in the future as we learn and grow. But that parallelistic structure of all that he's saying, verse 5 is phrased in a way where this ends that, just right there. Okay? Yeah, let's do this. Let's say it this way. I was gone last week, right? Um, during that week, my wife and I are away from each other, and this is something, even though undesirable at points, but this is something that's agreed upon. Why? Because there is intensive work that needs to be done for a period. It is God's design for me right now for at some periods of time throughout the year to go to somewhere else and to minister and to serve other people so they can get what they need. This is not me leaving my family and going off and leaving my family behind and just going and doing stuff. This is my family is with me in this work. She is strengthening me at the house, and she is I would make a joke, but because of the seriousness of what we're covering, I won't. She is sacrificing that time with her husband, that help from her husband with the family and the house and all these things for a week. She's sacrificing that so that those people can learn what they need to learn. My children are sacrificing that time with their dad, and I told them this before I left. Like, they're much as a part of this as I am. They're sacrificing their time with their dad because they know other people need to learn of God in a specific way. And this is God's design for me to do that. And then we come back, and then I come back, and we're together. You see, it's for a time. It's agreed upon together. But there's a wise and a non-wise way to do this, and there's an accurate way to do this and a non-accurate way to do this. And I have seen the inaccurate way of doing this. And I don't need to get into that right now, but it's not good. So defraud, remove strength from. It's a command. Stop removing strength one from another, and that way, except it be for a time, as you give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and then come again together, right? So that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. Now, that incontinency is not a difficult word. This word is used all over the internet for reasons why the King James Version is outdated. It doesn't take but a second to think of what incontinent means. You can be incontinent in numerous amount of ways, but it's commonly referred to now just one way. When someone's young, they're incontinent like a baby, and as people get older, sometimes due to illness or whatever the situation is, they're incontinent. What does that mean? They're unable to hold back. It's a releasing. They're unable to hold back, right? So it's not hard to comprehend at all. That's an easy explanation, but for whatever reason, that's one that's just, they think it's a gotcha ticket. It's not. So it means to release from, non-able to hold back due to a weakened state. The fact is, are you able to hold back? Yes, you are. But through that temptation, then you let go and release. And it has that idea of almost like pressurized, right? So a lack of strength to do so, to hold that back. So non-able to hold back due to a weakened state where strength is needed. So it has the idea of that pressurized going out. This weakening is to be done. This weakening is to be done in strengthening in another area, more dedicated to prayer and fasting. This is not simply, okay, I'm going to do the physical activity of praying. I'm going to do the physical activity of fasting. And as long as I'm doing those two things, I won't be tempted. What is prayer? Is it simply bowing our heads and closing our eyes? This is something that we're to be doing always, right? So this is in constant communication with our God. You have, if you're praying accurately, you can pray inaccurately, but when you're praying accurately, you're constantly aware of His transcendent presence. And like I've been saying on Wednesday nights, He existing, our presence. There's no separation. There's no alienation. We're existing in Him. And so it's a focus on that during that time. It's a focusing on, there's another manner of you're strengthening yourself in fasting. It's not giving your body what it naturally wants. You see? So it's doing that, but what is it for? It's for that, in some manner. It's for that strengthening of that relationship in God. And when they're both in that manner and they come back together, they're even strengthened better together for it. So, this is to be done for a short amount of time, and do not do this outside of these boundaries. You're setting yourself up for failure. And I've seen that it's often done. Almost they would never phrase it this way, but it almost seems like in kind of a hopes or if it might happen, and then they can just. It's sometimes our wicked minds think, oh, it's just easy. What is it? It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. I think that's quite an ungodly mind. So we'll stop there, and then we'll pick up at 6 next week. But keep this in mind as we get to this next week, Lord willing. I speak this by permission and not of commandment. This is not in the way it's normally taken. This is literally the word for joint-mindedness. Paul is one who walked with God truly. That is perfectly clear. And as he's seeking the mind of God and he's seeing the situation, he's saying, God's not commanding me to say this. I am already knowing his mind in this. I'm joint-minded in him. What is he saying? This is God's thinkings pertaining to this. He's not commanding me to tell you, although he's under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, right? He's not commanding me to tell you, but this is God's design for this. We do that all the time, hopefully accurately. So anyway, keep that in mind. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this evening. And Lord, thank you for all that you've given. And Lord, may we continue to grow in our devotion towards you in every area of our life. And Lord, again, we ask for your work